Our next guest, one of the more popular performers on television and in film as well. He is Bronson Pinchot. He stars in the television comedy series Perfect Strangers that has moved to a new time, Fridays at 8 p.m. He plays on that program a professional sheep herder who's come from his home in the Mediterranean to live in Chicago with the co-star Mark Lynn Baker. Why, Bronson, have they moved the show?
I have no idea. I was sitting at a restaurant last night a few tables away from Brandon Stoddard, and I thought about going over and asking him, but I decided against it. I have no idea.
No, none of the work, because the show is successful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they want to make Friday night successful?
Yeah, oh, that. Of course, that's part of the reason. I'm a little out of it, on that score anyway. Yeah, they want it. I mean, yeah, they have a block of sitcoms on Friday night, none of which aren't doing as well as they hoped they would. So I think since we've kicked off Wednesday night rather successfully, I think ABC pretty much has that night, yeah. And we're the first show of the evening. They were hoping maybe it would happen on Friday.
When you got the script for this, in which someone comes up to you and says, listen, you play a sheep herder who comes to live in Chicago with a man who claims to be a distant relative. I mean, did you buy this right away? Did you say, yeah, this can't miss?
Well, no, and also it wasn't a script ever before I said yes. They sat down with me and said, we have an idea for a thing about this guy he wasn't a sheep herder yet. They just said, we want this ebullient character who's a foreigner, who's innocent and exuberant and full of love, you know, and meanwhile I was like stifling the feeling of just throwing up, and you know, and they said, would you like be interested in entering like a development deal with us? We'd like to write it for you. And at that point I said, I don't think I can handle that. I mean, I don't know what that is. It sounds kind of hokey. And then a few months later, you know, I said, maybe we should talk about it, and then we did. But then, you know, they wrote the script like after I had signed on, because they wisely didn't want to just kind of write it and send it around, because it was kind of a weird idea. So they made me commit, and then they wrote it.
Can you step back, look at yourself, and tell us why you think it works? And the age span of people who love this show runs 6 to 80.
Yeah. Well, you know, we do, it's for the same reason that I was a little turned off by the first idea, I think, and now have come to embrace it. The fact is, it does deal in abstracts. There's nothing we do. We don't get humor from topicality, and if we do, it's maybe 2%. We don't get it from even topical images of men. Like, we don't come in, like, out of the shower with a towel and, like, you know, stomach muscles and all that. It's like nothing topical, nothing particularly hip. It's all like it's like pure abstract things like friendship, love, family. It's very basic and pure, like that first description they gave me. You know, they said, we want a guy who is innocent. And I thought, that sounds like an abstract to me. And it is an abstract. And that's what we go for on the show. And it's not like, I mean, I think in 5 years it'll still be funny, whereas if we, you know, we would not do jokes about Gephardt on the show, because it would, you know, we don't get into that.
Your break, if that can be the term, was Beverly Hills Cop, was it not? That's the part of Surge. How'd you get that?
I got it because the casting director had seen a rough cut of a movie called The Flamingo Kid, in which I had the director Gary Marshall had a little problem with an extra who was in one scene as my mother or my aunt or something, and the assistant director had let her go home. We were not finished shooting the scene. I think I just got a hair on my nose here. Anyway, they let her go home, and the next day we realized we had to finish the scene, and she was gone. Nobody knew where she was, and so he said, could you invent something to cover up this little thing? Just like, we need actually a little 2-minute scene. Could you improvise? We're going to shoot it at 5, and I said, sure. My mother's watching this. She's probably saying, there's no hair, now put your fingers down. Anyway, he said, could you come up with a thing? And I was so excited because I love doing that, and I love that. So that was at 10 in the morning. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we shot like 5 or 6 different versions of this scene that I just kind of was making up. And everybody was gathered around and was going, yeah. And we shot it, and I forgot about it. Anyway, he picked his favorite one, and now I feel like it's in my eye, Mom. And, not in your eye, put your hands down! Anyway,
That was a terrific movie, Flamingo Kid, by the way. And
well, anyway, to make a long-winded, it really does have a point. The casting director, Beverly Hills Cop, was also the casting director on that movie. She saw a rough cut and said, obviously, where did this scene come from? And Gary said he made it up. And she was just in the middle of casting Beverly Hills Cop and saw this kind of, you know, undermined scene and called me up and said, we're not offering it to you, but if you could do something like that, make up something, we'd like to see it. So I went in and I made up him, and they liked it. So that's
now you're going to have the lead in the film, right?
Yeah.
Second Sight.
Second Sight is the working title. Somebody else got the title first for an unrelated project, so we will eventually have to change that. But it's called Second Sight right now.
In which you will play a clairvoyant detective.
Yeah, I'm not exactly a detective. I'm just a clairvoyant who, you know, helps
people solve
department,
problems.
the Boston Police Department. Yeah.
Is that based on Peter Herkos, who in fact does that?
Well, distantly. Our technical advisor on the movie is a good friend of Peter's, and a couple of details in the movie are based on what Peter does. Peter does a lot of work with people's shoes and socks. I mean, he'll like, you know, well, he does it. I mean, everybody has their own thing. And he'll like take the shoe of the victim and then look at a map, you know, and like get the vibe on where the person is. And there is a scene in the movie where the Cardinal of Boston has been kidnapped. And there's a scene where like I have his shoes and they're balanced on my head, which is it's kind of a cheat because Peter doesn't do that.
Is this a comedy?
Oh, God, yes.
You don't play anything else, right? Has anybody given you a serious role yet?
No.